God'll get you for that one.
Maude is owned by Shout Factory.
God'll Get You for That, Walter, is produced for entertainment purposes only.
Sponsored in part by Findley's Friendly Appliances. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of God'll Get You for That, Walter. I want to get this out of the way first.
Get it out there.
Welcome to God'll Get You for That, Walter, a podcast where we discuss the 1970s hit sitcom Maude. My name is Tom Catt, and who are you?
I am Toni Homeperm, and
Are you sure? Tony with an I.
Tony with an I.
It's Tony with an I.
And this is a celebratory episode.
It is. It's a celebratory episode for us because this is our episode 50.
50, our golden anniversary.
Our golden versary, Anna.
Yes, and actually we're celebrating not only this, but this past weekend.
Yes, this past weekend. What did we do this past weekend?
We did our first live performance.
That's right.
As that Golden Girls mother-daughter duo.
Yep.
You as Dorothy, me as Sophia.
Yep.
Finally did it. We've done it virtually.
We finally did it live. And it was a rousing success.
It was a huge success. We did it at New Bar, a place that
New Bar in Farmingdale.
We performed previously, not as Dorothy and
Sophia, but we performed there twice.
Yes.
I performed there twice. You performed there a number of
many
times. Many moons.
And it was a big success. So
we had a fabulous Easter weekend,
yes.
and that's this will obviously be aired after the fact.
Yes,
but we had a wonderful Easter weekend.
We did. So kudos to us.
Cheers.
Yay!
As we clink our water
bottles. Okay.
So this episode of God'll Get You for That, Walter, we're going over The Kiss, which was season 3, episode 2.
Oh, and how funny! I did the song, Prince's song, "Kiss."
Yes. Oh my God.
And Sophia.
That was
on
too
the show.
funny.
So
that
how
was
apropos.
Too funny.
I just put that
You
together
just put
now.
it together.
Oh,
you just put it together.
Too funny.
It originally aired September 16th, 1974, directed as per usual by Hal Cooper, written by Norman Lear and Elliot Shainman.
Okay.
What'd you think of the episode?
So much better than Maude and the Duke.
Correct.
So much better.
But if you've noticed, the episodes are continuously getting a little bit more cartoony.
Yes.
I think they're leaning very heavily into the funny rather than the serious.
Although they did bring up some, they touched upon some serious topics, which we'll
they did, which we'll get into.
But
it definitely leaned more into the funny than it did into the serious.
Yes. But at least when they, like with this episode, when they leaned into it, it was really laugh out loud funny.
Yes, it was very funny.
There
were very funny moments in this episode.
Some really funny episodes.
And I also loved Maude's hair in this episode.
Looked good.
I loved Maude's hair. I mean, of course, I loved Maude's outfit because I want
you
Maude's
wouldn't be
wardrobe. I wouldn't be me otherwise.
Who would you be? I don't know who you would be.
I'd be Phyllis Diller.
True. Fair.
I'd be Phyllis Diller or Tony Fields.
True.
So the episode begins with Walter coming in while Maude is reading a book and drinking her coffee.
And they're in the living room.
They're in the living room, So Walter enters from the kitchen and he is cleaning a pipe.
Well, he's blowing into the pipe, trying to clean it.
Yes, he's blowing into the pipe, trying
aggravating Maude in the process.
Of course.
And we can just see it all over on her face.
We could see it on her face.
Yes.
Just how angry and annoyed Maude was becoming.
Continuing to blow through this thing, she finally asks him, "Are you going to smoke it or play it?"
Yep. And he, he's like, "Come on, Maude, like what more do you want from me? I'm trying to find something long and fuzzy, a pipe cleaner. And he asks Maude, "Where are the pipe cleaners?"
Yes. She tells him to starch a caterpillar.
Yep. Which I thought was very funny.
Yes, it was. There were a lot of funny zingers in this episode.
So we find out that
then he says fine, he won't smoke it. Then he starts clanging it.
Oh, that's right.
On the ashtray. So doing that, so now he's not blowing through to aggravate her. He's clanging on the ashtray to aggravate her.
And he's like, "Walter, would you stop it? You're driving me up the wall."
And she says she's never going to get used to the pipe.
No.
And Walter's saying, I can't even enjoy a pipe.
That it's been a week since he took up smoking, and that smoking a pipe, but that he quit smoking cigarettes and that he stopped drinking.
Right.
And he's like, what other pleasures do I have?
Yeah, and
Maude glowers at him. Maude glowers at him.
Yes.
And says it seems that, he's missed out on his husbandly duties.
Yeah, he's given up on his husbandly duties. And he insists that he took out the garbage.
And
well,
and she says she's talking about his number 2 husbandly duties.
Yes, and he complains that he's been tired, and there was something about Maude telling him that it's one thing that he can't
one
blame
function
on,
we can't blame on Nixon. Well, I mean, not for nothing. Okay, speaking of politics, because obviously Maude is a very politically driven show more often than not. Political unrest and political strife are definitely something that, causes a lot of anxiety for the American public. Yes. And for the public all over the world. Politics exhaust people.
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
And, I could definitely understand, Walter saying that he would be exhausted because of everything going on politically, because he's also an appliance dealer and, with the way inflation was at that time, it must have been very exhausting to be a retail worker during that time. I mean, the same way it's very exhausting being a retail worker now.
Absolutely. I mean, retail work is the worst.
Any type of public service is exhausting because you're dealing with the public, you're dealing with their exhaustion, coupled with your exhaustion, coupled with inflation, coupled with what do I want to say here? Coupled with minimum wage not rising to a livable wage. It's very tiring. Yeah. And I would never, ever want to work in the food service industry.
Oh, God, no. Yeah.
I couldn't.
Yeah, no. I was just seeing something. The latest thing is they're talking about, and a few of our friends commented on it.
Yes.
People who worked in the
food service industry,
how they never want to work on a Sunday. Because apparently the churchgoers that come in on a Sunday are the absolute worst to deal with. Worst tippers.
What's the old expression that I remember reading? There's no hate quite like Christian love.
Oh my Lord. Yes.
And that's how I feel on the subject. And don't get me wrong, there are times when I was working in retail and these little old ladies would have a conversation with me and we would get to talking and then they would slide me these pamphlets and I would read these pamphlets and I'm like, I'd rather have the cash.
Yeah, right.
If you're going to tip me. Don't give me... no, just... I refuse. I refuse.
Did you see there was something... It's been on, Facebook and TikTok. There was some plane where these born-agains, in the middle of the flight, they're standing up and they're singing they're playing the guitar and they're singing some, one of their spiritual songs or something, and trying to convert people on the frickin' flight.
Oh my God!
And the poor people are just trapped there. Yep. I was like, what? I don't get it. What is the need? And we talked about this the last time. I think the missionary who went to that island trying to convert those indigenous people.
Yes.
And they.
And that missionary is no longer with us.
They killed him. But he tried invading them 3 times, and 3 times was
third time was the charm.
Third time was the charm.
Third time was the charm. They got him. God got him. God got him.
What makes it okay though for the Christians to have to indoctrinate all these other people? I mean, I don't see other religions doing it.
I don't know. I think because
and just think how they would feel.
Think about
if they saw other religions doing what they do.
Think about how history is taught in America specifically. Mm-hmm. Think about how America is taught about religion and Christianity. I mean, when I was in high school, I learned about the 4 pillars. I think it was the 4 pillars of. I learned about the 4 pillars in oh my God, why can't I think? In the Muslim religion, in the Muslim faith. Learned about Taoism, learned about Taoism. I learned about Christianity. I learned about Judaism. And, you know, when I did catechism, like, because I was, you know, a good little Christian boy that had to go to church school.
Yes.
I learned all about, you know, Catholicism in that way. I made First Communion. I was confirmed in the Catholic faith. And, you know, there really is such an interesting mentality when it comes to being a Christian. Because there are people who are just so devout in their religion. And, you know, they always feel that Catholicism and Jesus was always, the talking points when it comes to religion.
Yes.
It's, you know, it's just so fascinating. It really is that when it comes to me personally, I will always try to read the Bible as a book. It is not a religious text to me. The Torah is a religious text. The Bible is a religious text. And I would read it as such. I would read these texts as like not the word of the Lord.
Right. Because it was written by men.
It was written by men and then translated all the way down through all of these things.
And revised.
And then the kings they took it over. Just, it's gone through so much that those stories just don't add up anymore.
No.
And that's exactly what they are. They're stories.
They're stories, exactly.
So my question is, why is their story so much better than the other person's?
Right. What makes one better than the other?
Like, and it's just this my God has a bigger penis than yours.
Basically, yeah.
Like, I mean, George Carlin did a beautiful bit about religion and whiteness and how the two correlate. And I can't recommend it enough because, like, really, that is what it boils down to. It's that.
That's like, I mean, I've seen people post a few times on Facebook this week because of Easter. Colonizer Jesus and historical Jesus. And, of course, colonizer Jesus is this Caucasian, fair-haired, blue-eyed,
and there was actually we're gonna get to him in just a moment, but there was something that I remember watching, and it was Billy Graham.
Oh yes, Billy Graham.
It was Billy Graham talking about how Jesus wasn't white.
No, he wasn't,
and how Jesus was more the skin tone of of someone that was more darker with a more darker complexion.
He's Middle Eastern,
and thank you. Like
that's where he was born. I mean,
even in the Golden Girls, like Dorothy said to Sophia, "Ma, Jesus was Hebrew."
Right.
And that was it.
Yeah.
Like
he also never stopped being a Hebrew.
He never stopped being a Hebrew.
So
that's
something that gets. Yeah, people tend to forget. But we digress. Where did we leave off?
There are other episodes where religion comes very heavily into play.
All right. Well, we'll get to it.
We'll definitely get to that.
But it was pretty foremost this week because it was Easter.
Because it was Easter, of course.
It was Easter.
So we can't blame Nixon, and you know, Maude finally starts to come to the crux of it, where you know, she notices that
he's smoking a pipe, wearing the new clothes,
wearing new clothes, and
new shoes.
There's a moment where Maude turns to Walter and says, "Take your shoes off."
Take your shoes off.
And Walter relents, and he's like, "No, Maude, I'm not going to do that." And Maude says, "Please take your shoes off." So he takes his shoes off, and he is just about. Like, he is no longer eye level with Maude.
Right.
He is far shorter.
Yeah, it's far shorter.
And, you know, it's important to know that Bill Macy, I think, was like 5'6", 5'7", and Maude was like 5'11".
Oh.
So she stood a couple of inches taller than especially because she had such high hair. So she stood about a sizable height above Walter.
Right.
And, you know, the height difference was very comedic. And there was...
You know who else?
Who else?
Wore lifts.
Who wore lifts?
Desi Arnaz.
I can believe that.
Yeah, they have, like, you can see there were some pictures where you can see, like, where you saw, like, his shoes. And he was wearing, like, these really, like, high heels.
Yeah.
Because they wanted him to, you know,
they wanted him to stand really, really tall against Lucy.
Yeah. I thought that was.
And
so
I mean,
funny.
he also wore these like double-breasted, really broad-shouldered suits.
Yes. So Maude realizes she's figured it out. She knows what the deal is with Walter.
Yeah.
It's male menopause.
Male menopause.
Yes, it's all.
Which was a thing. I mean, to my knowledge, male menopause still can be considered a thing.
Yeah, I don't really ever hear them discuss male menopause. Usually, you hear the term midlife crisis.
Yes, midlife crisis brought on by changing in weight, changing in hair, the metabolism isn't what it used to be, just getting older.
Yes,
with men it's getting older, and with women it's menopause. There was, hilariously enough, there was something that I remember reading, and it was Cole Sprouse talking about Disney starlets, quote unquote, going crazy. And it was more or less one of those things where he was addressing the dynamic and the difference between, male Disney stars and female Disney stars. And, it made me ask the question, why do female Disney stars go crazy and why do boy stars just go through something? And that was the dynamic that Cole was pointing out. There's a clear difference between being a male star in the quote unquote Disney world and being a female star in the Disney world. And I look at examples like, I'll say it's like Cole Sprouse and Dylan Sprouse, and then you look at examples like Britney Spears and all that she's gone through. And it's very interesting to see the dynamic. And, we went over this again in Maude's Facelift where, getting older and how women are viewed a certain way and how men are viewed a different way.
I can think of another example, most recent, with, the Avengers movies. Scarlett Johansson was, on the press junket with her male co-stars. And, they're getting asked just these, sort of standard questions. And somebody was asking her about her underwear or something
to that effect,
playing the Black Widow, and she was like, "Why are you asking?" She's like, "You wouldn't ask the guys a question like that. Why are you asking me a question like that?"
And I remember also Anne Hathaway being asked a question while she was I think it was just after either the release of Batman, The Dark Knight Rises, or something to that effect, and the male co-host on that show was asking about her diet. On how she got into the cat suit. And she looked at him and she was just like, "Are you trying to get into a cat suit?" She threw it back at him. Why is there such a double standard? I wouldn't ask a male co-star what their diet is. And I mean, even Hugh Jackman made it poignantly clear that the diet that a athletic star goes through in order to maintain that sort of superhero physique is very challenging.
Oh, sure.
But no one has ever asked a man their diet or what they did to get into shape.
Right.
But it's always the women that get asked that question.
Yep.
Because men are supposed to look that way.
Right.
And apparently women aren't.
Right.
Just it's this continued double standard of women are treated one way and men are treated another.
Yes, and also, with women putting the focus on their appearance.
Of course. Yes.
Whereas a man might get asked "Oh, well, what was your train of thought for getting into the character?"
Yeah,
or
they get asked the acting questions,
and the woman is like, "Well, how what did you do so that you could fit into the cat suit?"
Yep.
And it's obviously very pointedly sexist.
I put on my cat suit the same way anybody else does, one leg at a time.
One leg at a time. I hope you use some talcum powder.
Nope.
No?
Nope, because it goes on that smooth.
Oh, jeez. Spare me. So, Maude says it's just like, the TV show that they were just watching about male menopause.
And she was like, remember that TV special where we saw that one gentleman who wore the new suit and the wedgies and was smoking the pipe?
Right.
And Walter says...
That was Walter Cronkite.
That was Walter Cronkite.
Which it was. But no, it wasn't exactly him. It was the other guy on the show.
It was the other guy.
And Walter's insisting it's not menopause.
You're putty in the hands of the media, which, I mean, we can say that about a lot of people.
Yes. And I have something about Maude bringing up his shoebox of baseball cards under the bed.
Yes, because Maude has an obsession with television and Walter has an obsession with baseball cards.
Gotcha. That's why. And Walter's, he's just like, he's fed up.
He's fed up and he goes...
Because he can't do what he wants to do and he's going to go into the den.
He's going to go into the den, smoke his pipe, and wear his high heels.
Yes.
And he can't open the door. It's stuck. And, he turns to Maude and says, "Why is the door stuck?" And Maude turns to him and says, "Kick it with one of your high heels, Walter."
Which is, at that point, Vivian now comes in and she's crying.
A
she's
mess.
hysterical.
And, like, this is where we start to see a real shift in how Vivian is, like, being portrayed. Like, especially with, you know, Vivian being this sort of bubbly, over effervescent, basically housefrau.
Right. Yes.
And now, like, at one point she was very astute, very intelligent.
Right.
And now she's sort of becoming very subservient to Arthur.
Yeah.
So she comes in and she is weepy and misty-eyed and crying, and Maude initially says, "Oh, here it comes, Miss Tiny Tears.
Yeah.
Vivian, I love you, go home."
Go home.
And, you know, Vivian is very, 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 very crestfallen. She's like, you know, Arthur and I are having the fight of our lives. And Maude says, and you decided to bring it here to Madison Square Garden. So we come to find out that, you know, Vivian has her dog Chuck, which is the name of her ex-husband.
Which they didn't mention anything about. I thought
they did. Chuck was
at some other
mentioned.
point?
I'm trying to remember when Chuck was initially mentioned. I think it was mentioned when Chuck and Vivian were going through their divorce, and Chuck wanted to take the dog, and I think Vivian was asking, like, whose dog is it? And I think it was a gift from Chuck to Vivian, and she named the dog Chuck. And I think Maude said, it's Chuck's dog. And I think Vivian called Maude a fink for saying that.
Right. I remember that.
And I'm trying to remember what episode that was specifically, but it's not coming to me. But that was, I think, the first utterance of Chuck. Right. But I think there's... I'm trying to remember when...
But, like, could you imagine you're with your partner and they have a pet that's named after their ex, and you have to like say the ex's name all the time?
That would be embarrassing for all parties, really.
Yeah, I'm just like, change the dog's name.
Yeah, you know, literally. But
the Buck, or I don't know, something that sort of rhymes with Chuck.
Yeah,
the dog will get used to it.
The dog will get used to it.
They would get used to it. You know, as long as you feed and take care of the dog, they won't mind.
But Vivian is nuts.
Yes. And also Maude she's telling Vivian she has her own problems because her husband wears wedgies, right?
Yeah, she said, I just found out my husband wears wedgies.
And Vivian is saying, oh, this is all Arthur's fault because Chuck lifted his leg on Arthur.
And then Vivian says, and then Arthur did something unspeakable. Yes. And Maude just stares at her and says, he retaliated. And then Vivian says, well, Arthur said an eye for an eye. Why? Yes. And when I hear that, I'm like, does that mean that Arthur peed on the dog?
Yes.
Oh,
an eye for an eye.
That's just no.
Yeah.
I'm not. No. Like, try again.
Hello. Then you've got to give the dog a bath.
You have to give the dog a bath.
That doesn't really work.
Yeah.
And Walter now continues to go back to like trying to blow air through the pipe.
Yes.
He's doing that. And Vivian is saying that
Arthur wants to give Chuck
away.
Yeah.
So Maude says she's gonna go talk to Arthur because she can't take it anymore.
Yep. And then she says to Walter, if you're any kind of person, give Vivian advice.
Right.
And Vivian, if you have any sense at all, don't listen to him.
Right.
And she storms out, and Walter and Vivian are left alone.
Yes.
And they're sort of commiserating with each other. Yes. And, you know.
And Vivian's like, she's saying, you know, things about Arthur that, you know, she doesn't like. Like, he puts
shoe trees in his slippers. And to those that don't know, shoe trees are air fresheners.
No, they're not.
They're not.
That's not what a shoe tree
is.
A shoe tree, my dear.
I'm going to be educated now, for I am not old.
Now,
what is a
allow
shoe
me
tree?
To educate you.
Great.
A shoe tree, it's one of those, well, usually they're wooden. It's like the foot form that you put into the shoe so that it retains its shape.
Is that what that is?
That's what a shoe tree is.
See, when I heard shoe tree, I was like, it's got to be an air freshener for your feet.
No. It's like, you know, you've seen them, you know, it's like the top half looks like, you know,
I've seen the one that you have for your shoes and the one that my family has for theirs.
Yes, I have the ones that like will stretch out a shoe.
Yes.
So that not all of them do that. Some of them are just
forms.
Just a form. But yeah, because what can happen to like a shoe, like usually you buy a shoe and it's stuffed with tissue paper.
Yes.
That's so that, you know, it doesn't start to like, you know, sag.
Yes.
So a shoe tree keeps
the leather shape.
Yes.
Keeps the leather shape.
That's what a shoe tree is.
Well, you know, you learn something new every day.
See?
I was wrong and he was right.
The more you know.
The more you know.
The more you know. Rainbow.
Shooting star right over our heads.
Shooting star, yes.
So that's what a shoe tree is, folks.
Yes. And
in his slippers. Shoe trees in his slippers.
Yes. And Walter's complaining that, you know, being around Maude, it's like she's complaining about the pipe, that God is going to get him.
God will get you for this. God will get you for that. Like living with a Billy Graham and drag.
Yes. I love that line. Love that line.
Well, I'm a B. Arthur in drag, so I commiserate.
I know, and you do it so well.
I really do.
And they pay you for it.
And they pay me for it.
They literally
pay
you to do it.
They pay me to do it.
Yes, I was like, we can put that on our resume now that we
can get paid we're professional
impersonators. Why are we professional? Because they pay us.
Because they paid us to do it.
They paid us to do it. Makes us professional.
That's right.
Oh, and
so they start talking about, you know, Walter starts talking about how Maude like constantly denigrates to him and makes him feel less than for doing what he does.
Right.
And Vivian is like, well, that's not how I feel about you. And then I think Walter says something to the effect of like, Maude's probably over there like
psychoanalyzing
Arthur and using these big words to like talk down to him, and we cut right
to Maude and Arthur.
And Maude says, "Arthur, you're a dummy."
And Arthur's he's saying about all the crazy things that Vivian does for Chuck.
Home-cooked meals, knitting sweaters.
She gets up at 3 o'clock in the morning to take him for a walk. Yeah. She never gets up. She never does that for Arthur.
And you know, Maude points out, Arthur,
you're jealous.
I think you're jealous.
He's jealous of Chuck.
And Arthur like does this big macho thing where he's like, I'm not jealous. I got more brains in this pinky than he has in his entire body.
Yes. And he finally admits that he is jealous. He is jealous. And Maude tries to tell him, you know, put aside your pride, apologize to Vivian.
Yeah. And talk to Chuck as if he's your son.
Your son.
Which, I mean, anybody that's a pet owner knows that you will always talk to your dogs as if they're your children.
Well, I do that with my cats.
Correct.
I talk to them like they're my children.
Yes. And they listen. They understand.
Do.
They hear you.
They do. They love it. They love it.
So
Arthur says, "Dada is gonna give you one more chance."
Like he gets up and goes to the door, opens it, and says, "Chuck, son, it's Arthur.
Yeah,
Dad.
Dada." He says, "Dada. Dada is gonna give you one more chance," and Chuck.
Retaliated.
And we hear Chuck sort of growling.
And then we pan down to Arthur's leg, and it's covered in wet.
Yes.
It's covered in mess.
Obviously, you know,
the
Chuck is not having it.
The dog did not listen.
He did not listen.
The dog refused to listen.
Yes. And then we cut back to Walter and Vivian is still crying.
Yep, still crying.
But
they're cuddling up to each other.
Yeah,
very close.
Like Walter has his arm around Vivian,
and they're talking to each other and they're commiserating with each other.
But this did start that. Well, I don't know if this was the start, but this is definitely we're becoming more about Vivian being that sort of weepy. Dish rag kind of character that she became.
Weepy milquetoast.
Yeah.
Weepy milquetoast.
When we think back to like when we first met Vivian.
In Maude's dilemma, she was, you know, astute. She was and I think it was one of those moments where they were still trying to find where they what they can do.
The dynamic.
With Vivian.
Yes.
Because as we've mentioned in previous episodes, they initially wanted Doris Roberts to come out and read for Vivian.
Right.
But then when the directors saw B. Arthur and Doris going back and forth with each other, they were like, it's Maude and Maude 2.
Yes.
They didn't want Doris to play another Maude.
True.
So when they brought Vivian on, they were like, okay, the dynamic works. So then by season 2, they were like, okay, we can make Vivian a little bit more wishy-washy, a little bit more like...
Because she wasn't like that when she got the facelift.
Nope. No, she wasn't. She was very proud and prideful, very in charge of her own autonomy.
Yeah.
And now she's just, weepy-eyed and milquetoasty.
Yeah, very true. So Walter says, Vivian apologizes for crying on Walter, and he's very profound. He tells her that
his tears are no wetter than hers.
Right.
Your tears are no wetter than mine.
Yes,
That's poetry.
Yes.
You're lyrical.
Yes, it was just so touching, so moving.
And they I think Walter starts talking about starts trying to smoke his pipe again. And Vivian is like, oh, I love a man that smokes a pipe. I think it's very distinguished.
They're sort of like Vivian is saying she wouldn't treat
Walter the way Maude does.
And she says she loves.
He feels that Maude doesn't appreciate Walter's sense of humor,
right?
And they're sort of being friends, commiserating with each other.
Yes, and Vivian is saying, she's talking about Arthur not liking Chuck, and Walter saying he loves dogs, and Vivian's she's saying that she loves pipes.
Yep.
She thinks they're very distinguished,
and Walter pauses for a moment, and he's like, "This is crazy."
Well, even before that, he said something about a dog that smokes a pipe.
Oh, he made the joke about a dog smoking a pipe.
Yes.
And then Vivian's like, "Oh yes, oh yes."
Would it be great if there was a dog
that smokes a pipe, a pipe smoking dog? I mean, there technically was with what's his name, the insult comic dog.
Who?
Literally, it's literally the name of the comic. The comedian is something the insult comic dog.
Oh, I'm not familiar with.
And it's a hand puppet with a cigar in his mouth.
Okay.
You've never seen that before?
No, I mean the only comedian puppet I know of is Mr. Bill.
And for me, it's Sherry Lewis and Lamb Chop.
Well, I don't know if you can get your hand that far up my dress. But for $1,000,
I'd be willing to try.
I'd be willing to try.
No, what was his name? I forget the name of the dog, but it's literally the insult comic dog.
I don't know.
And it's this Jewish comedian that has a puppet that's a dog with a cigar in his mouth.
Okay.
And a bow tie.
I don't remember that. Oh well. But we digress. All right. So and Walter points out he was just joking. He was making a joke about a dog smoking a pipe.
Yep.
And Vivian's like, "Oh, Walter, you have a wonderful sense of humor," and and they're just getting very sort of comfy and cozy.
Very cozy.
And Walter, he's basically like, "This is crazy."
Yep.
And he's like, he jumps up.
He jumps up and he goes to walk away.
Yeah.
Why does he get up to go walk away, Tony?
He was having a feeling.
Yep.
Yeah.
He was having a feeling.
He was feeling.
Feeling.
Nothing more than feelings.
Nothing more than feelings.
That was a big song in the 70s.
That was a very big song.
It was a very big song. And then it became like a parody of itself.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So, and Walter says, for a second, he felt like kissing Vivian. And he's like, this is crazy. And Vivian's like, no, it's not crazy. I felt it too.
She said, just for a second, I felt like kissing you too.
Right.
And they point out like there's nothing between the two of them. Yes. That Maude is Vivian's best friend, and Arthur is Walter's best friend.
And they're adults, and they can't be doing something like this.
Yep.
And of course,
they still kiss anyway.
But
I want to point something out.
Yes.
Walter initiated this kiss.
Yes, true.
And as they're kissing,
yes,
Maude and Arthur walk in the door.
Of course they do, because what better time?
What perfect timing, as sitcoms do. And
then they went into this hilarious bit.
I call it the Mouseketeer roll call sound off. That's what I call it.
Where they're each just shouting out
each other's names.
Like, Arthur, Maude, Vivian,
Walter. Arthur, Maude, Vivian, Walter. And then there's a pause because the audience is losing their mind.
They were hysterical. It was so funny.
And Maude grabs Arthur's arm and looks at him and says, "May I borrow your dog?"
It was funny.
And then we, after that moment, we cut to commercial.
Go to commercial.
And when we come back, Maude is just standing there contemplative on the couch.
Yeah,
she's holding her head, and
she's like, "How strange."
And then at that point, I think she turns to Arthur, and Arthur's like,
yeah. And she was saying something like, 1 minute you're happily married.
The next minute, poof.
Yes.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Yes.
And then she gets up and immediately starts singing Divorce.
Yes.
Saying...
Oh, but she gives Vivian some advice. She tells him that Walter likes the curly-Q potatoes.
The curly-Q potatoes with his roast beef.
Yes. And she starts, dividing up all the property.
Yep.
In her,
how they'll split the coffee.
Yes.
They split the coffee. Maude's going to sell the house.
Yes. Well, no, I thought she was keeping the house.
Someone was keeping the house.
She was keeping the house. Yes, but she was dividing everything up.
Dividing everything up, and then at the end she starts crying. We'll go halvesies on the fondue forks.
Yes, but she does insist that she asked them to Vivian and Walter to
give
stay
them
apart
3 months.
For 3 months,
stay apart for 3 months. By that point, Maude will be comfortably settled in a monastery in Tokyo.
In Tokyo, yes. Would they know that she wasn't a woman? That she is a woman. They know that she wasn't a man.
That would be between her and the monastery.
Okay. All right.
Trust me, if you put me in a nun's habit, who can really tell the difference?
Yes. And then Vivian and Walter are just they're basically telling Arthur and Maude, you're blowing this all up out of proportion. It was just they're saying it was just an innocent kiss.
And Walter says it was, why didn't I think of it? It's male menopause.
Yes.
And Maude turns to Walter and says, come on, Walter, male menopause was to win my argument, not yours.
Arthur he's demanding satisfaction.
And Walter's like, don't be ridiculous.
Yeah. He tells him, you're blowing things out of proportion.
Arthur actually says, well, Vivian got it, how come I can't?
Yeah. And I think Walter, was it Arthur or Maude who was accusing Walter of undressing Vivian?
Maude was accusing Walter of undressing Vivian with her eyes.
With his eyes.
And she asked,
every time they're out.
Yes, and
Walter's
like, never!
And Vivian's like, never?
So I think at that point, Walter's like, I'm going into the kitchen and make myself a pot of coffee.
He's gonna make coffee. So Walter and Maude, they go into the kitchen.
Yep.
And they're making coffee, and then they get into a discussion, which is a fair discussion.
Yes.
I think about what kind of goes on in a relationship.
Yeah.
As far as do we think about somebody other people? Even when you're in a relationship.
Yeah. And I think Maude points out, every time a short skirt passes, your head whips around so fast your eyeballs get whiplash.
And, and he says, well, that's the part he likes to look at.
Legs. He's a leg man.
He's a leg man.
What parts of a man turn you on?
What parts don't?
I asked that question.
Ear hair. That's probably the one thing that turns me off.
Ew!
Yes. Ew. I know.
I mean, for me, I love biceps.
Okay.
I'm a sucker for biceps. Okay. Biceps and buns.
I was gonna say, would you turn down a tight pair of buns?
Not in the slightest. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I am, but I mean, biceps and buns, that's it for me in the good times department.
Okay, fair.
That's literally going to be my autobiography. Biceps and buns, the story of Tomcat.
There you have it, Pussycat. But as people
it
look.
Does ask the question, people will look.
It was, I remember one time.
I mean, let's think about it this way. After puberty, when you're experiencing things, you will use inspiration.
Of course.
And even when you're with somebody, there will still be inspiration. Mm-hmm. That's what the porn industry was based upon.
Of course. I remember one time, me and my husband, we went into the deli down the street, and there was this really young, muscular guy in there, and he was wearing something like a vest kind of a thing with no shirt on under it.
My goodness.
And yeah.
The vapors you must have been getting.
And then we left, and my husband was like, I saw you looking at that guy. I said, we're married. I said, I'm not dead. I was like, what can I tell? The guy was good looking, so I looked. Hey, if they're putting it out there to be on display, don't fault me for just taking a gander at the goods.
It's very true.
I mean,
but there are some couples out there that will get very jealous of their partners doing that.
Oh yes,
very jealous of their partners.
Absolutely.
Doing that. I mean, it's human nature to look.
Yeah,
it's human nature. Like, I'm not saying like to gawk at them and to lick their bodies.
Yes,
but I mean, it's just human nature to look at what is on display. But I mean, to sort of bring it back and make it, feminist in a way, it's, there are men out there that will look at women in a very salacious way.
Oh, yes. Some
and they'll go above and beyond and make it really uncomfortable.
Yes.
And, there are men out there that will receive similar treatment from women, but it always gets looked at through a different lens.
Yes,
very true. One instance for me, and I think I may have mentioned this on the show once or twice, but there was a convention that I went to where I was dressed up as Amazon Eve from American Horror Story Freak Show, and my legs were shaved, I had on my breasts and the corset and all that fun stuff, and I had on these really, really, really short shorts. And, me and my friends were walking around the streets of Baltimore, and we passed this, group of older men. And they were, and whistling, and I'm like, can we get the hell out of here, please? I am feeling violently uncomfortable.
Oh, my.
And it was one of the first instances where I really felt like a woman.
Now, you know what
now I know what a woman goes through. Yeah. And it's really upsetting.
Yeah.
And, even... I'm going to also bring it back to Disney, because of course I will.
Of course.
In the Disney parks, the Disney princesses are so heavily guarded, but yet there are still fathers that will hit on them and flirt with them right in front of their wives and children.
Oh, Lord.
But... on the other tentacle, there are Disney princes like Aladdin and Prince Philip, where the women will be just as raunchy. And, no one really points it out because everyone expects the Disney princesses to be treated a specific way.
Right.
But no one will point out that Jack Sparrow, Tarzan... I think it was one of the reasons why Tarzan was removed from the parks.
Oh, yeah.
And also, Peter Pan.
Right.
And I'm trying to think of, other... male face characters that get treated in similar fashion. And it's one of the reasons why the discussion is had, are we going to there are certain characters that will be removed because they will be harassed so violently.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So it's fascinating to me. It really is. I know a lot of Disney performers that could tell horror stories.
Oh, I bet.
Could tell
I couldn't imagine
horror stories.
Meanwhile, back in the kitchen. Maude, she's saying that, she's seen Walter looking, and Walter, he throws it right back to her. He says that he knows, he's saying, you've done the same thing. He says he knows she's fantasized.
They exit.
Oh, did they? Oh, okay.
They were exiting.
Yes, walking out, and right.
They were exiting the kitchen.
Right, yes.
And that was when Walter was pointing out, you also fantasize. Sometimes you even fantasize about men.
And Maude is like, that's not true. She's not true.
How dare you?
Yes, very aghast.
Very aghast.
And then she just comes out with it.
And she says, Paul Newman!
Paul Newman! But only because I think Walter had fantasized about Joanne Woodward. Yes.
And that was because I wanted ours to be the perfect marriage.
And that's when Vivian says...
Arthur says... You're all nuts.
Right,
you're depraved.
Right. Yes.
And more importantly, you're rude.
Right.
And
Vivian
calls him out and says, "Oh, you're no better than them." And
right.
She says, "You fantasize too." And he goes, "That's absolutely absurd." And having the same reaction that Maude had.
Right.
And, Vivian turns to Maude and Walter and says, Arthur fantasizes about Dr. Joy's brothers.
Yes.
And that joke, it was a great joke that landed, and I appreciated it.
And Arthur insists that
it was a professional courtesy.
It was platonic.
It was platonic. Doctor to doctor. Doctor to doctor.
Not like Walter and Vivian's kiss.
Correct.
That's when they hear the car.
The car,
and they know
yes,
Carol is coming in.
And Maude is frantic.
She's freaking out.
She's freaking out.
She doesn't want Carol to know what was happening.
She must not know a thing that goes on right now.
So they can't let her know. So she's
Walter's like, well, what's the big deal? Carol's a grown woman.
Yeah.
And Maude's like, Walter, when you've lovingly given given a daughter 4 fathers. And it's interesting to point out, Carol's father is Barney.
Right.
And since Barney, there's been 3 husbands afterwards.
Right.
So that's technically still 4 fathers.
Right.
So that's Barney, Albert, Chester, or Barney, Chester, Albert, and Walter.
Yes.
So she says, when you've lovingly given a daughter 4 fathers, you don't spring this on her.
Right. So Maude's like saying, we've got let's pretend to be playing cards. So they're grabbing cards.
They grab the cards.
And they all sit down.
They're all sitting down. Carol enters.
Yes.
And she's like, hi, guys.
Yeah.
And they're all like saying, hello. And Arthur cries out over everyone, aloha. It was one of the funniest moments in the episode for me. Because at that point, like, Maude turns to Arthur and, like, just gives him this look. Like, what?
Yeah.
Sir?
Yes. So Carol, she asks them what they're playing, and they all yell out a different card game.
Maude yells out canasta. Walter yells out rummy.
Bridge or something. I don't know.
I think it was there was
what were they?
Canasta, hearts, rummy, and what was the one that you just said? Bridge. So they all yell out different card games.
So Carol immediately knows something's going on, and she asks them. She's like, "What's going on?"
Okay, guys, what's happening?
She's like, she knows something's up.
Yep.
Maude is saying nothing.
Nothing's wrong.
She tells Maude, she's like, listen, I was not born yesterday.
I was not born yesterday, and I know when something's wrong.
Yeah, and that's when Maude proceeds to, Vivian and Walter are having an affair, and she grabs Carol and she's crying.
And in each other's arms.
Yes. And
Carol bursts out
laughing.
And she's like, Walter and Vivian and Walter. And that's hysterical. And she's walking up the stairs and cackling and laughing.
And Maude, she says to her, well, I'm so glad you can appreciate my grief.
She did say that.
And Carol she's like laughing,
she's
going
still
up
laughing
the stairs,
hysterically,
and she's laughing about the sin in the suburbs.
She turns to them and goes, "Good old fashioned sinning in the suburbs," and laughs up the stairs.
And Maude,
and the camera turns to Maude, and she says, "And to think I spent 3 days looking for a marble in her potty
in her
seat."
potty, yes. Mm.
And, Walter was like, Carol's got the right idea. Just laugh it off and move on.
Forget about it.
Laugh and forget about it.
Yes.
And, of course, Maude being the melodramatic woman that she is, she says, mentally I can do that, but emotionally I can't.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And Walter, he pointed out that, he was just responding. Vivian needed help. He responded to her
in the only way he really knew how
at that moment.
Yes.
And
he said, use your emotions with what's available to you, or some of that effect.
Yes. And I don't remember what was the pretext for Walter and Vivian to go into the kitchen together, but they do.
Yes, they did end up going into the kitchen.
And Arthur's like, can they be in there without a chaperone? And Maude basically said, give them their own... give them their own space.
Yeah, Vivian, actually, before they entered the kitchen, Vivian says, if you don't trust us, tough turkeys.
Yeah. Yes.
I think Arthur said something, and Maude said, oh, shut up, Arthur.
Yeah. So Maude and Arthur are sitting on the couch, and I think was it Arthur?
Arthur was the one who suggested, well, come on, we'll kiss and we'll call them out, and they'll see us make out.
We'll give them a taste of
their own medicine. And Maude turns to Arthur and says, wouldn't it be easier to just go in there and shoot them?
Yes. And Arthur, he was insisting. He was like
this has been
pucker up,
this has been
and
a very
I'll call them.
Yes.
And
pucker up and I'll call them
you
out.
know.
He's like his lips are all pursed and he's ready.
Yes. And so after Maude makes the remark about it'd be easier to kill them, Arthur's like, well, that's not nice. And, and Arthur, he's just getting, very, very sad.
He's getting
about
very
the whole
upset.
situation, getting very upset.
This has been a very trying day for me.
Yes. And
at that point, I think he just bawls.
Yeah.
He starts crying into Maude's chest.
Yes.
And like Maude is comforting him, saying, "Oh, Arthur."
Yes, she's putting she's holding him,
and she stops and she says, "Arthur, look at what we're doing."
Yes.
And Arthur looks down at Maude's breasts and says, "Oh." And they have this moment where Maude finally realizes it really makes sense what Vivian and Walter were doing.
Right.
And she turns to Arthur and says, despite the fact that I loathe everything you stand for, and despite everything that's gone on between the two of us, I wouldn't. It wouldn't be
that hard to kiss you.
It wouldn't be difficult to kiss you.
Yeah.
And Arthur giggles away, and he's like, "I wouldn't be that difficult to kiss you."
It wouldn't be that bad to kiss you either. And that's when they kiss.
Here's the interesting part.
Yes.
The first kiss, Walter initiated.
Right.
This time, Maude initiated.
Yes.
So it was, I really appreciated that from a directorial standpoint. Because you have Walter initiating with Vivian and then Maude initiating with Arthur.
Right.
And I appreciated that.
And that's when Walter and Vivian emerge from the kitchen.
And they just gasp and they're like, "Wow!
We understand." And I believe it's Walter who suggests that they should all just kiss and make up.
Yes.
So
Walter runs to Arthur. Walter runs to Arthur, and they're hugging and holding on to each other. And then they have a moment where the audience was laughing, and then Walter they all have this moment.
Yes.
Then Walter turns to Vivian and they almost embrace, and the opposites were paired together.
Right.
And then at that point, Walter goes to Maude, Arthur goes to Vivian, and they hug and they kiss and they do and they move on. All's well that ends well. All's well that ends well. And then we come to the epilogue.
And we're in the kitchen.
Yes, we are in the kitchen. And, I think Maude is drinking a cup of coffee.
Yes.
And Walter enters and
good morning.
Kisses her good morning.
He tells her no more pipes.
No more pipes. They stained his mustache. They burned his tie. And, Maude's like, "Oh, honey, you're so understanding. I love you. And then he lights a cigar. Lights up a cigar.
And Maude just puts her hand up to her head. She's obviously going to need the aspirin.
Yep.
Or the air freshener.
The air freshener.
I hate the smell of a cigar.
Really?
Hate.
Yeah, I'm not that crazy about it either. I'm not crazy about pipe smoke. I'm not crazy about cigar smoke. But I mean,
pipe is not as bad as cigars.
It's very heavy. They're both very heavy scents.
Yeah, but pipe. I remember my father smoking a pipe, but he had something that sort of had a cherry smell, so it wasn't bad. But pipe cigars, ugh. I don't know.
It's like smelling 10 cigarettes at once.
Oh, I don't know how somebody could. Oh, well, as it is, I mean, I don't smoke either. I've never liked cigarette smoke.
I mean, if ever I'm smoking, it's usually because I'm incredibly stressed out.
Right.
That's
I never understood that. How does it actually relieve stress?
And I asked that
really,
it's the nicotine.
Does it give you
nicotine?
What does it give? What is the feeling?
The nicotine triggers receptors in the brain. The chemical nicotine triggers receptors in the brain.
Okay.
And I don't know if the nicotine releases serotonin or it just either deadens or calms your nerves. It is explicitly the nicotine that does that.
Okay. All right.
It is explicitly the nicotine that does that.
Yes. I would imagine an orgasm could do the same thing.
I mean, I would rather personally smoke a cigarette than have an orgasm, but I understand your resolve. I understand where you're coming from. No pun
Well, I mean,
intended.
when you're out in public, it's probably easier to smoke the cigarette.
Than have an orgasm. Although I've had a few orgasms in public.
Oh,
I'm
Lord.
not. Listen, I'm very open about my sexuality.
Okay.
At least to people I care about. God forbid my family finds out that I had sex in public. That'll be the end of it for me.
Oh, Lord.
They'll take away my license and my keys.
Oh, God. Oh, my Lord.
Oh, gracious.
Well, I'll just say I have been to Fire Island.
In my
youth.
Well,
and I'll leave it at that.
And you'll leave it at that.
And I'll leave it at that. You can fill in the gaps.
I've never been to an orgy, and I really, truly don't ever want to be.
No.
Nope.
Okay.
I do not like orgies.
Okay.
I like having one partner and one sexual partner, and that's it.
Okay.
Like, I mean, sometimes I'll take them two at a time, but it depends on how. Depends on if I had my Cheerios that morning.
How many people does there have to be considered an orgy?
4 or more.
Okay. I guess I checked that box then.
4 or more is what I would consider
Okay.
what I would consider an orgy.
Box checked.
Congrats. Congraties, you've done it. So proud of you. So proud of you. I'm just so proud of you now.
I was gonna wait till you were about 60 to tell you that, pussycat.
Thanks.
I think you can.
You think I can hear it now? Oh, hell.
Oh, my Lord.
But, I mean, all things considered, this episode really pointed out the kinship that people can have and how comfortable friends are with each other.
Yes.
I have never been in a situation like this.
No.
Because I usually am the type that's like, okay, this person is my friend's partner. I don't want to...
Yeah, no.
But I mean, I will say this. There are times when I'm out with like my best girlfriends and I'm like, I could make out with them if I wanted to because I've made out with friends before.
Okay.
You've never done that?
No.
Really?
No. Made out with a friend? No.
I mean,
No.
When
I'm
I
like
was-
very like compartmentalized. Like when you're in the friend zone, that's where you are.
When me and one of my best girlfriends were in our 20s, there were nights when like either she would get a little drunk or I would get a little drunk and then we'd make out with each other. Never got any further than that.
Okay.
Never got any further than that. Although there was one time, and it's hysterical we talk about fantasizing. There was one time when I was making out with my girlfriend Allie and I was thinking about the guy that I was seeing at the time.
Fair.
And then I had to just stop, and I'm like, we need to stop before anything else happens, because
Yes.
the last thing I need is a child, and the last thing you need is a pregnancy.
Yes.
So,
Oh my goodness.
just... But I'm still a platinum gay.
Oh, there you go.
Still a platinum gay.
There you go. Does that really need to be a thing?
Not in the slightest.
I mean, I don't think so.
It's at this point, it's a winky pin. That's the extent of it.
I feel like that was like a thing for a while, but now I feel like it's like, you know what, people, you should be.
The more genders change, and
exactly.
the more trans individuals come out, and the more.
People are not defining themselves so much more as
so specifically
just black or white.
Yeah.
Male, female. We have, we're seeing that, it's not just male, female.
That's right.
There's a whole sort of spectrum.
There's a spectrum
of gender.
Gender and sexuality are all a spectrum, and they are forever evolving and changing.
Yes.
They're forever evolving and changing. I've read there's the Kinsey scale, and I'm trying to think if there are any paper. I'm sure that there are like medical papers on transgenderism and the ever widening gyre that is the spectrum.
But also,
of gender.
I've seen like a something that there was I don't remember if this person was a biologist or something like, but they were definitely a scientist.
Yes.
And knew about like genetics and things like that, and said that it's not just XXXY.
Yeah. Sometimes there's XXX. Sometimes there's XXY.
Right.
Sometimes there's XYX.
And there's a lot of different like receptors on the DNA that like it's not just.
Intersex is a real gender. Intersex is a real gender.
Yeah, there's all this, different variances in between.
Yeah.
So I feel like more and more it should be, people shouldn't just be like, oh, well, I'm this and I'm just attracted to that. And it's like, why not be like, well, I'm getting to know this person as like a complete human being, and
that's where the idea
maybe I could be open to sharing something with this person.
This is where like pansexuality and demisexuality and asexuality and homosexuality and heterosexuality like they all come into play at some point.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, at one point I was like, I am a staunch homosexual, and then like after a while I'm like, I mean, I could be bi. There are times when I will see a trans man and I'm like, they are very attractive.
Sure,
I could see myself being sexual with them.
There you go.
And it's just it's forever changing and it's forever evolving.
Yes, it is.
And we really should be more and more open to the idea. Like, I actually had this conversation with someone this past weekend, and I don't know if it was my therapist or if it was the guy I'm currently seeing. And I was like, change is important. Change is important because change means growth, and change means educating oneself to new things and experiencing new things.
Right.
And sexuality is definitely one of those, evolutions that we have. So.
And I mean, really, it's like you look at other cultures. It's because really this, we're living in the United States.
A very Eurocentric.
Eurocentric, and don't forget,
a very Eurocentric and Christian mentality.
This country was founded by religious
zealots
that basically they wanted to get the hell out of Europe, so that they could lead an even more austere and strict lifestyle.
That's right.
Terrible. Yeah, but other countries, in the world and throughout history, this notion of like, well, you're either male or female, and and
that's the bottom line.
And that's it. And a male has to be with a female, and that's how it is. That those in other cultures doesn't exist. They were more open to like, well, a male can be with a male, and or even like Native American
and then
culture
there's two spirits.
With the two, yes, exactly. That they didn't, they respected individuals who felt that they embodied aspects of both genders.
Yeah,
they weren't looked down upon.
That's right. And it's it's interesting how we have these conversations, and I think in other episodes of Maude there will be a conversation where we have a gendered conversation about the evolution of what it means to be a man, what it means to be a woman, what it means to be in that sort of gray area between both. Like, I identify as non-binary, and I believe that is apparent in not only how I dress and how I act and how I talk. And, it's more or less a question of what... I'm trying to think how I want to word this. It's more a question of how open-minded will you be to these new experiences and these new evolutionary developments.
True. Very true.
We're intelligent here at God Will Get You for That, Walter. Where can they find you?
Well, of course, they can find me everywhere. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and of course, it's Toni Homeperm, and it's Toni.
Toni with an I.
With an I. And where will they find you?
On the local street corner.
Well, I know that.
If you want to follow me, you can at that TomCat on all forms of social media, and that is Cat with 2 T's. If you would like to follow this podcast, you can where all podcasts can be listened to.
Everywhere.
You can find us on YouTube at God Will Get You for That Walter, on Facebook at God Will Get You for That Walter, and on Instagram at Findley's Friendly Appliances.
Yep.
And we thank you so much for listening, and you will hear us again in another episode of God Will Get You for That Walter. Bye, guys.
Good night.